One of the things that has changed a lot in society and certainly in the professional workplace in a really good way is the far greater awareness of neurodiversity challenges that many people face. I have no doubt that even if you're not aware of it, you would be working with neurodiverse professionals in your business environment. I know that I do, and not only do I work with neurodiverse professionals, I work with neurodiverse people in a musical context. I'm a professional musician as well, and I'm also a sports coach, and I have coached and do coach people who have different neurodiversity challenges. So whilst I don't have a neurodiversity diagnosis myself, I am quite close to some of the issues that people who have neurodiversity can deal with. And it's something we all need to be considerate of. So today I'm going to walk you through some tips on what a neurodiversity experience can be like for someone who has to deal with this, and also what we can do as professionals when we're working with others to make their lives a little bit easier and ultimately produce a better result for everyone. Some of the things, and by the way, this list isn't exclusive, but some of the things that neurodiverse people can have to deal with, let's start with a simple one: screen fatigue. And we all suffer from screen fatigue over a period of time. But for some people, this can be quite a significant challenge. So that having to stare at screens for long periods of time and concentrate on information can be quite overwhelming from a sensory perspective. And limiting that constant need to stare at a screen can be really, really helpful. Speaking of sensory perspective, many people suffer from sensory overload, where too much information or too much stimuli coming in all at once can be quite challenging, and it becomes very difficult to focus on one thing at a time. Another issues are some people struggle to pick up nonverbal cues very well. So something that maybe a flicker of an eye or a slight shift in posture that maybe someone like me can quite readily read and understand that there's a shift of energy in the room, or someone may be feeling a certain way. Others don't pick that up so easily. So that can be a challenge for them. Also multitasking. Let's talk about multitasking. It's something I dislike at the best of times myself anyway. I feel like multitasking is a myth. It's doing two or more things suboptimally. People who tell you they can multitask, well, they can, but what happens is one of the functions is really on autopilot. That's what's occurring. So to give your full attention to several new pieces of information at once can be hard. And let's be honest, the modern condition that we live in, we're multitasking all the time. You sit down to do a piece of work and the phone rings or a message comes in, or your Outlook gives you a little bing bing in the corner when a new email arrives. This is something we're dealing with all the time. Now, if you're neurodiverse, sometimes this can be particularly challenging. Again, think back to sensory overload. It's too much stimuli, and it can be very hard to focus properly on work and get things done the way you want to. And the last one I'll say is use of technology. Now, for some people, this is very, very easy. For others, it's challenging. And again, understanding people's diversity is important. Let's make sure that everyone has an opportunity to use technology effectively or understand how it can benefit them. So here's some tips I have for dealing with neurodiversity and trying to accommodate neurodiverse people. Can I say this? Overarching principle here is let's meet people where they are. If you feel that someone has to adapt to your style of communication, then I think you've got it wrong, whether they're neurodiverse or not. If you want to be effective, if you want your communication to land, well, yeah, we meet people where they are. We think about the audience perspective, that one person or that group of people or those 100 people. What will help them get the most out of your communication? And if you're communicating with a large group of people, well, it stands to reason you will need to be more diverse in the way you approach your communication challenge. The more elements of communication you can put together, the more you can accommodate the needs of whomever is in your audience. So these are things we need to think about all the time. I'm now going to share with you the feedback I've received from my neurodiverse friends, work colleagues, athletes I've coached, and participants I've worked with in various professional workshops. These are the things that they've told me matter most to them when it comes to helping them engage with the communication and get the most out of it. 5 tips. Here's the first one. Keep to time. Sounds so simple, doesn't it? It is flagrantly broken, that rule, so often by many people who communicate. How often have you sat in a meeting that's run over time? Now, for some people, this is particularly disconcerting. Some people love to know exactly how long the meeting will go for, how long each element of the agenda should proceed for, and when it will finish. And if you're talking to people for a longer period of time, when are there going to be breaks? How will they be scheduled? When will they start and finish? Now, this information for some people, particularly some neurodiverse people, is critically important important. And if they are not across this, it can create a great deal of anxiety. My second tip, as told to me by my friends, really important to regularly frame and reframe content. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you think about a message, we start by framing it. This is the why. This is why this is important. This is what we're going to talk about. This is what you can expect. Then we have the message, the content, and then we reframe at the end. We summarize. This is what we just discussed, and these are the messages we should be taking out of it. Frame, reframe content. Helps people understand and come to grips with your messaging, which is really critical. Are you noticing these tips probably would work with anyone, not just someone who's neurodiverse? Exactly. That's the collateral benefit. If we're diverse in our thinking about communication, it really helps us reach our diverse audience, whether they have a neurodiversity diagnosis or not. Third tip, be as multimodal as you can in your communication. Let me give you some examples. Let's assume you're running a meeting and you're doing it via Zoom or via Teams, which is something that's very, very common these days. And imagine you'd like some interaction. Well, to constantly just ask questions at the screen and expect people to verbally come back at you with answers is not the most effective way to create engagement with your audience. Now, there's nothing wrong with what I've just said, but if you do that exclusively, it can be exclusionary to others, potentially. So instead of just asking for verbal feedback, why not get people to interact in the chat? Why not put a poll up? Maybe there's some interactive tools you show by way of a slide that you're using, a PowerPoint slide or a flip chart. Think about the various ways you can encourage people to engage that will meet their preference, and you're likely to get better group interaction. If it's just one person that you're talking to, then it's really good to hone in quickly with some questions on what's easiest for them. Multimodal. Don't assume one way of doing things is the best way or should be the only way. The fourth thing I will mention to you as a top tip for ensuring everyone can engage with your message is create a distraction-free environment. Distracting sound, distracting movement makes it harder for people to engage with you and your message. And I'm saying this a lot, but it's really worth repeating. It's a great rule no matter with whom you are communicating. People with neurodiversity challenges tell me this is very helpful, but I'll tell you, I find it helpful. It's just helpful not to be distracted when you're trying to engage with someone and listen to their message. And now my fifth tip, and one I'm particularly passionate about, is this: speak in plain and simple language. It is not necessary to fill your speech with multisyllabic, mellifluous words or the latest corporate buzzword. It doesn't make you any clearer. It doesn't make the message any easier to understand. Simple, plain language is appreciated by anyone who just wants to understand what you are trying to tell them or what you would like them to do. Again, I know I feel that way. I love clear, simple, plain language, and my neurodiverse friends and colleagues tell me they do too. So there you have it. 5 tips given to me by people who should know on how to engage with anyone, no matter how they might be approaching your communication.